I'm excited about this episode of the Elite Recruiter podcast. I have a special guest, Adam Gellert, and I'm excited about having him on the podcast because we're going to talk about how you can use technology as a superpower and a differentiator when it comes to your recruiting business. And he has this awesome company called Hired Hippo, where they literally are use technology to have, to work with the candidates and work with the small businesses up in Canada. And it's really just like a superpower way, a way to differentiate yourself and really just like leverage technology to grow a recruiting agency. So Adam, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Ben. I appreciate you having me. I was excited about this.
And Adam, I know you're one of the I guess most well-known LinkedIn recruiter players on LinkedIn in the recruitment space in Canada. So excited to have you on the show.
Well, that is very flattering. I appreciate it. I hope I can live up to the expectations that you've created for our audience here today.
Well, the first question we always like to jump into is how did you even get started in this recruiting space?
Yeah, I think like 99% of us kind of just fell into it. Someone that I had worked with previously in, another job, which was, completely another industry, just, in a record store actually. And they had been impressed with the way that I just like interacted and just like cared about the people that I work with, people that I surround myself with. I think that's um what I'm, best known for. And um they said they were opening up a recruiting agency. I jumped on, I just kind of fell in love with uh the way the industry worked, but I, also felt like there were parts of it that weren't me. And so that's why I went off on my own and created my own agency, which is called Linkus Group, and then later on started a company called Hired Hippo.
And so real quick for the guests, Hired Hippo. First of all, your mascot is a hippo. Like one that stands out, and two, just like how'd you even get to a hippo as your mascot?
Yeah, it's great. I think naming companies is always super super tough. I thought about a lot of ideas, but what I really wanted to do is, um, create a very like happy, sort of, something that you could relate to, where people are going to see it in the streets, or, at a toy store or something and just take a picture and say, hey, I thought of you, right? Something that's like memorable, really good SEO. And so the first concept was hypo, which is high potential. And that's what we're really striving for, which is like, how do candidates get the most high potential companies and how do companies get the most high potential candidates? There's a number of ways that we go about doing that, but that's where Hippo came from, where we wanted to create that. I also just, looking into hippos as animals, they're land and sea. They can be, very aggressive when they need to. And, just kind of getting away from a very noisy space, I felt like it fit really, really well. And it's something that people say that, hey, I'd never forget the name.
That is awesome. And I did see like, it was one of the companies on LinkedIn that you've worked with before. And they literally called out every other recruiter out there, just like, please leave me alone. Like, I work with Hired Hippo. I'm happy there. I don't want to deal with anybody else. And I just saw that. I was like, okay, that's a lot of brand loyalty when it comes to like a client. So, and real quick, what does Hired Hippo do? And how are you guys different?
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. So Hired Hippo came out of a side hustle of me working within the agency. And as we created this space for our clients to kind of, be able to recruit on their own, what we found is they were like, there's no good tools out there. We're using LinkedIn. It's very noisy and messy. We're using all these other tools to be able to recruit on our own. There isn't anything. So what Hired Hippo essentially does is curates that experience for companies. We are a marketplace of high potential, pre-vetted talent that companies can go and access to quickly interview them in a click. So the concept is very simple. Most people understand it as a dating app. We figure out whether the candidate is passive or active, who are the top 20% of people within their given fields, and what are they looking for in order to make their next career move? What would be sort of like attract them to that brand? And then we take companies, ask them those same questions, and use our matching algorithm to make really solid connections. So typically what you would get is instead of 250 applications, you'd get 10 solid applications that you're likely going to interview all of them. And that's how our product works.
That's phenomenal. And like I always joke that there's so many ways that you can do things in the recruiting space. And you're coming at it with like a technology angle, almost like a tech company. So it doesn't even feel like a recruiting company. Why did you guys like take that angle compared to like other ways you could have built your recruiting business?
Yeah, very interesting. For me, I've always been sort of like not wanting to go the path that's like, less traveled, like the easier way, right? So I want to disrupt people's thinking. I want to change the way that they are currently doing things. And what we found is that, company like hiring is risky, right? So you can't be never 100% correct. But what companies and recruiters are doing is they're just wasting a lot of time on, unfit interviews and, things like that, which really puts them behind other recruiters in terms of getting the right person in the door. And it, also hurts that the candidate and the candidate experience. So what I wanted to say is like, hey, like instead of going after this volume play that most recruiters do and most recruiting platforms do, we want to go after the select few. And that's kind of how we came up with it.
Nice. And when it comes to like a technology angle, like, did you guys have to like come in and raise like millions and millions of dollars to build a platform, or did
Yeah, great question. We actually like haven't really taken funding, and we're bootstrapped. And the reason is that, our service business allows us to do that, but we're not looking to go fast. We're looking to go slow and smart. For us, this is a very noisy, messy space, and we want to do it right. We want to do it with a lot of care, and we want to do it with a select few people that, both on the candidate and company side, want a better future of work.
okay? And when there's a lot of platforms out there that are talking about no code building and then code building, and I'm sure you have like a dev team, right?
Yeah, we do have a dev team. We've gone through a number of iterations, in terms of even the tech stack that we used. Originally, the product was started, really as an AI chatbot, where you'd go on Facebook and you would say, I'm looking for this particular job. Send me some options. And what we just found is like there's so many mediums out there. Those mediums change so rapidly. We don't want to rely on one particular medium to do that. To be, uh, you know, held within that in case something goes, south. And the other part of it is that, you know, candidates are less likely to pay for something because there's so many options for free. And what you really need to do is create a service that's just 10x better than what else is out there. And so that's what we did, and that's what we do for companies, but we get paid from the company side.
That's awesome. And for anybody that's thought about coming at the space or whatever niche that they're in, more of like a technological angle, kind of like a tech company like you guys are doing, what advice would you give them on building a platform or building a marketplace or building something as a differentiator?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I would say that, technology is really, really hard to build. You can't think of it as it's going to be a quick sort of fix, right? It's got to be, you have to have very long-term solutions. And you also have to really test assumptions. So I would say that like what I typically tell people is like, just stop listening to people's opinions and start executing. There's going to be so many opinions that you get in terms of how to build, what to build, how to do it. And I think that's like really slows down a lot of companies because you have to be able to choose the right opinions. And usually most of the opinions are incorrect. So that's sort of like what I would really focus on is be you know super passionate about the problem that you're looking to solve, know that problem inside and out, and just listen to customers, and try to do as much as you can without building any tech whatsoever, and then slowly build tech. Because raising money, as you mentioned before, it's like it's a different avenue. It's not necessarily easy either, right? So
Yeah, that's awesome. And I will say this, I kind of played in like some marketplace software for the space I was in. And after about a year, like we realized like how hard it is. So huge credits for you and putting that together and like, really just kind of attacking the Canadian small business space that you guys are doing. So it really like comes at as a completely a differentiator, which is what I love.
yeah, you get
Uh,
it.
and we were definitely self-funding. And so like, I totally get that. But, when it comes to like everything that you see out there in the recruiting space, because, you're everywhere in the Canadian market. You're actively involved in so many different things. I feel like we're coming at a place where recruiters need to start evolving. What do you think recruiters need to do to start like be getting prepared to evolve for the future?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think you know, AI and technology has polarized a lot of people. A lot of people are ready for it, and other people are sort of like, I don't want change. Definitely, our best customers are people that you're excited by, changing their previous thought process in terms of, how many candidates they had to meet with. How do you screen for candidates? Where do you find them? That kind of thing. So those typically are our best customers. Um, I think that, it's recruiting is a very human focused industry. It's a harder industry than any to disrupt with, technology and AI. I think there's a lot of players out there that are very surface level in terms of how they're disrupting it, but people are people, right? So we're always going to change. So in terms of like, really am kind of bullish on pushing people to use it as a enabler to be better, faster, and less expensive. That's really what recruiting is, right? Like, how do we get the best person for the job in the shortest amount of time possible for the least cost, right? But when it comes to making decisions and, finding quality, not really using that because I feel like that's not a long-term play. It might be short term, but the best angle to think about it, and I know, we both think this, right, from recruiters, is it comes down to quality, right? So how long does that person stay in the job? How fulfilled did they feel for however long they were in that job, right? So those are some of the things you kind of need to balance between building technology or using technology within your day to day.
Awesome. And
I don't know if that's
uh,
the answer you're expecting, but
definitely a good one. And it kind of goes into my next question I have for you is like, you're so passionate about this space. And, I think it's like what many recruiters go through is like, we all just kind of like, or many of us just kind of like end up in the recruiting world. It wasn't our first choice. Maybe it wasn't our second choice. We just kind of like, we're here and we started building our career. But I see this like divergence of people that hate this job, but they stay in it. And there's people that just become that, I don't want to say like learn how to be passionate, but they become passionate about the industry. How where is there like a place where you turned a corner or that you became super passionate about the whole recruiting space?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, yeah, I truly believe in passion as a starter. It's attitude over skill. For me, I just found out like it's just about being self-aware, right? Like I just really found out that I tend to quit things if I'm not the best at it, and I found that I could actually be the best in the world at recruiting and helping solve this problem, and so I put everything that I do 24/7 into this industry and solving it and trying to help other people, and just be, help like create this network of people that we can work all together to solve a problem, is, where that passion continues to, flame and, be front and center. And as you mentioned earlier, right, like there's few people that mention us as like the only in a post of the only recruiters that they would use, right? And that means a lot to us, but it also shows us that, caring more than anyone else and just like really showing up and maybe, when you're wrong, admitting that you're wrong, and testing different assumptions has like, just had everlasting effects.
That's awesome. And, you know, I see you out there like actually helping other recruiters, and I don't see that happen all the time. Like, why do you go out of your way to help other recruiters that are technically might be your competition?
Yeah, I'm actually friends with a lot of people who are technically my competition. Uh, I find like, I don't have all the answers. I want to learn. I want to be better. I want to help other people be better. So, for me, it's much more important to build together than it is alone. And so, just kind of, just been someone who is, I'm going to put everything that I have on the table, be really nice, be open, give trust until that's taken away. Right. Um, so yeah, so I just, I think it's important for the industry because I think the industry is like, it's changed so much over the last, you know, few decades, right? It changes very, very rapidly. Um, and I think recruiters get a lot of bad rep in terms of, it's too much of a sales environment. They don't care. So I think we need to work together as a community, to really change the perception of recruiting in the industry as a whole. And I think that if I win, other people will win, if we're doing the right thing. So, um, that's why I love to kind of, connect with people within my community like yourself. So it's great. I appreciate you having me on. Friend is a friend is a friend.
Awesome. And jumping back over to the tech side of the house, if a recruiter or recruiting agency is looking at starting a tech angle, what should your first like hires look like to build out like a tech stack?
Yeah. So you mean if a recruiting agency wants to build their own technology? What?
Like build their own different differentiator,
Yeah.
whether it's like, I don't want to say like something that you're doing or an internal like tech stack or internal solution that they can like use for recruiting.
Yeah. So I mean, I would say the first thing is like customer discovery, sort of like a not really a sales role, but a customer discovery role, which is like, is what we are going to be building useful and it makes sense.
Okay.
Then I would say the second thing is um, someone who is product focused. So, you know, how do we design you know, we're going to build? How is it going to interact? What are the competitors doing? Does it make sense, right, for us to be going down this road? And I caution with that because technology is like 1000x more expensive than anyone expects. It's like building a house, right? Like it's going to take longer and more expensive than you ever thought. And so, I just I think that, before putting any code down, like that, those are the most important things. They say it in a lot of books. A lot of people don't listen. Um, it's really hard to see if the product actually works if, you don't have something built, but there's a lot that you can do. So, especially if you understand the industry well and you are a, recruiter, like you said, building technology. And then, have somebody who is going to be the brains and the mind behind the tech and how it's built, and from there. And so, I would say that's kind of like the starting point.
I think that's a perfect starting point. I think what I'd love to talking about the early starting point about actually like gauging the industry and having conversations. You know, I've been around multiple tech companies, startups, and it's amazing how many years and how much money is spent without even like asking potential customers if this is a solution.
Yeah.
uh, like on it, like if you were thinking about like doing like a tech solution, how many people would you say that you should probably get in touch with to ask these questions if the solution would be right for them?
Yeah, I would say it's never enough amount of people. It's probably like, 10x the amount of people you think. I mean, at least 1,000. It's because, a lot of people will just say that, hey, they like something or they're interested in something and not actually put money down or again, in our industry, it just changes so rapidly, right? And there's so many new competitors that come out that you really have to actually be successful with a group of people before moving down that road, which I think, just makes it really, really hard, even though there's a lot of tools that are available right now. The interesting thing actually with recruitment and recruitment tech, um, and work tech in general is that it is one of the most popular topics to tackle because hiring, as we know, touches everybody. You either get hired or know somebody that gets hired. So everyone feels a connection to it, whether they've been a recruiter or not, or been hired or not. And so it's the most popular thing to tackle, but it's the most difficult thing to solve. And it's the most difficult thing to solve because you're not creating anything that's tangible because the people you're creating it for aren't tangible. They're humans and they're people and they change and the economy changes and all these things factors change, right? And the other thing is that who you're selling it to typically has no buying power and has no budget. So I typically tell people that, like, look, I would love to tell you about all the great things about solving this problem, but it is so very, very hard. And I definitely wouldn't be here without crazy determination and just, liking pain and a lot of hard work. And I think you could see from a lot of these companies that have, exited or have, stumbled or have trouble, that's been the issue.
And I always, always, always love when I see like a rec tech company that was actually started by a recruiter.
Hmm.
It is so often you go to some of these like pitch competitions or, pitch things and you like, it sounds good, but then like you start digging into it and it doesn't really solve a problem or like it's like you said, it doesn't solve a problem of a person that's actually going to pay for it.
Yeah. And there's so many ways that you could solve this problem, right?
Yeah.
There's, there's so many different parts of the hiring process, right? That you could solve, right? So figuring out how you solve that problem, when the problem's solved, what you start with is very complex, but you got it
Awesome.
for sure.
Well, is there anything else you'd love to share about like building a tech platform or your tech platform before we move on to the rest of the podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that, like, anyone obviously, like you mentioned, like I'm happy to help people. So, anyone can reach out to me. I get a lot of calls with like, hey, what do you think about this idea? This is what we're building. What have you seen? So I'm happy to keep doing that because, maybe it would be investment, maybe it would be something where I'd be happy to get involved or just help somebody, along the way. But, yeah, there's this one thing that um, happens a lot and is like focusing on one thing and getting better at that one thing over time is the best way that you could put your time and money, right? So it's not necessarily like, I don't want people to assume that tech is the best way to solve this problem. There could be other ways to solve this problem outside of, technology. Um, it's an ability to allow those ideas to scale, obviously. But there are some amazing companies out there that, you know, we don't necessarily utilize technology on the forefront of what they're doing, and still doing really great things and adding to the ecosystem and, striving forward. So, I would say that it's not like you know, the ultimate must do, right? So,
Awesome. Well, we're going to flip over to the quick fire questions. And, you've been in the space for a while. You've talked to a lot of recruiters. You talk to new recruiters. What advice would you give to a recruiter that's actually just getting started off, as they're brand new in their career?
yeah, I'd say the most important thing to do is just to care really deeply about how people make career decisions, and how companies solve business problems and who the best people are for the business problems. Because, you don't want to get into recruiting because you like networking and you like people. It's a lot more complex than that. That won't get you really that far, right? And it's never one-sided. It's about the perfect balance and the perfect match, long term. So I feel like, what I typically tell people is like, you just need to know more about the industry. I find a lot of people start recruiting and then they're like, hey, this isn't for me very quickly. So you need to know these things up front, ask a lot of questions, get some really good mentors, be kind, humble, and resilient, I think is super important. And so, um, yeah, those would be some things. And then I would say, welcome aboard. Like, let's do this together, right? So,
That's awesome. I think it's like once people get past that first year or two, like, and then they see like the benefits, the conversations, the lives changed. But man, I remember personally my first year when they kind of gave me that call list of like 75 calls per day and just like fill it out, make the calls. I was like, well, this sucks.
yeah,
But
you gotta go get through those to really listen and hear those conversations, right? So,
yep. So same question, but for the recruiters that have been around the block 5, 10, 15, 20 years, what advice would you give them based on everything that you've seen, the conversations you had, for them to either see success or keep on being successful?
yeah, I think it comes back to a lot of things we are talking about, like just really be open to change, right? Like that, there are things that, are available out there that can enable change and, improve sort of like the system that you're currently, maybe you were used to previously. Um, I would say that give back, learn a lot, and just like, be a good part of the community, be a good actor within the community, I think is really important because, now more than ever, people have the knowledge and the ability to know who they're working with, right? Like they can make their own choices. It's harder to sell people on something when they get referrals and they know people, right? So I think as an experienced recruiter, we just really need to focus on, how we show up and the referrals we get and stuff like that. Is in my opinion super important.
Awesome. And has there been a book that has had a huge impact in your career?
Yeah, I would say, I don't know if a lot of people have read or heard of this book before, but it's called Black Box Thinking by Matthew Syed. And really why I like it is because a lot of things we talked about, which is challenge your opinions and, figuring out your errors and creating sort of a system that enables organizations to learn from mistakes. I was recruiting and I was scared like you to like make all those calls and, I had like a cue card that I, had no idea who this person was and never talked to them before. It was like, it's okay if you make a mistake. Don't be an ass or anything, but, don't make a mistake. It's okay if you make a mistake. You can fix it. Right. So, just being able to have that type of learning, I think was important, and I think you could do it at any stage. So I really like that book.
I'll definitely check that out. That's one I personally haven't heard of. I normally like to ask like, what's a favorite rec tech tool, but I feel like Hired Hippo is yours.
Nah. Yeah, definitely hired Hippo. I mean, shameless plug, I would say, and the reason is because, you know, I really believe that, less is more. People are just so obsessed with, oh, like, bigger the pool. I have this many candidates. I really think that, for the best use of people's times, um, uh, you know, having a solution that curates kind of your experience, and helps the candidate, helps the company is the best way to go. So, that I really like Calendly. Obviously, that's been a huge game changer for me. Um, and use my health app a lot on and Slack's like I don't know, one of those products that they did a lot of customer research and used it themselves, and I think it does like solves a huge problem for company communication.
Awesome. And looking at your own like personal success, like you've done multiple things in the recruiting space, like lots of wins. What do you think has been a huge driver for your own personal success?
I think it's hard work and being a really good recruiter to build a team to help me execute on that hard work. That's just plain and simple. I, would have never got here if I wasn't interested in hard work. I mean, I used to have three jobs growing up at a time, going from one to the next. Um, and I just don't know how to turn it off, which could be good or a bad thing. But for me, it's like that's where luck meets opportunity. And I think the other thing that has really worked for me is just continuing to maintain strong relationships and just caring deeply about the solutions, has, mixed with, uh, the hard work has really worked and paid off.
Awesome. And like everything that you know now about the recruiting space, like when you first got your recruiting job, if you can like grab a cup of coffee with yourself, what advice would you give yourself?
I'd say keep working with the people who want you to succeed and forget about everyone else. I was so, I wanted to take kind of every job and every, thing. And I think like it wasn't, I don't fully regret it because I learned a lot about how to recruit for veterinarians and do very obscure things I never do anymore. Um, but what I really realized is, how people show up, and connect with you and speak to you. Those are either good conversations or bad conversations, that can really change the trajectory of like how your whole day goes or what you do. Like they always say it's like the top 5 people you hang around with, but we never do that for our customers. And so we're taking all these like customers that like, can potentially drain us or carry us into the wrong direction. And I feel like, because I probably cared too much. I was taking on people that didn't care about my success as much as I cared about theirs. So I would say that's something that I learned very much.
Ooh, I like that a lot. And you mentioned a few minutes ago about like putting on your recruiting hat and recruiting the best people for your team. I've seen this like over my almost 2 decades in recruiting. Like we're so good at, at recruiting like our niche, but we suck at recruiting for our team. How do we get better at, or how do you get better at recruiting the people for your own team?
Yeah, you bring up something awesome there, Ben. It's like nobody heeds their own advice. It's like you can coach and train and teach people, but then you're like, oh well, I might as well, be okay with this person because because they said this. Like it's fine, it'll work out. I need them that badly, but we never like, so yeah, I mean, I think like it, definitely comes down to values, like as cheesy as that sounds, right? It's like, what's the value of the company and are the people that you're bringing into the company, like holding those values, the same kind of advice again that we give to, our customers. For me, the really big ones are trust, passion, and attitude. Um, and resiliency because recruiting is super, super hard. Every day could change. It could be, much harder than the next, right? So, just looking out for those things, asking the right questions, I think, to me is super important, but that's me. It could be different for, everyone else. And then, just remind ourselves that 90% of the recruitment process is onboarding and, how we treat people when they come into the company, right? So as a leader, it's like always thinking about, okay, if it doesn't work out, this is my fault. Where else could people go? And really taking that care and time. And look, I was not nearly as good at recruiting internally as I am now. Um, we've definitely got the best team that we've ever had by far. And it's because of these nuances that I learned over time of, who was um, who's going to be successful, who hated recruiting so much at their current company and they wanted to change it so badly that they wanted to get out of recruiting. I love hiring those people. So
That's awesome.
yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
That's awesome. It's like you said, it's like we give so much great advice, and how often do we turn around and spend even 5 minutes at implementing it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Adam, how can people get a hold of you, Adam, or follow you?
Yeah, so I've got our website, recruiteradam.com. That's the best way to access all my info, as well as just as much as LinkedIn, obviously, Adam Gellert, and I've got a little hippo logo, for good measure to find who I am. So those two things are the best way, and yeah, click follow. I mean, I try to pump out a bunch of content of things that I see in the industry or care about. Uh, and that'd be it.
Awesome. Well, Adam, before I let you go, is there anything else that you'd love to share with the listeners?
Yeah, I would just say that like, you know, as as a group of, you know, great minds and recruiters out there. Like, let's work together to solve these really big problems that touch people every day. Um, and maybe rethink the way that we've currently been doing things and continue to do things in a more unique way, with more empathy. That's what I would say.
Fantabulous, Adam. And like I said, I love that you guys have built like a tech platform. Me and a friend hired a developer, started going through everything, realized it's a ton of work. So, but I love that what I've been watching with you on LinkedIn and how you guys have used technology to scale to impact more people.
Yeah, it is a lot of work. I think, with our product, it was like figuring out, okay, there's a million ways that we could solve this problem. How do we want to solve it? So
Awesome. Well, Adam, thank you so much for coming on, and for the listeners, keep crushing it, guys.
thanks. Thanks for having me, Ben.